started out by saying, you know, the clarity of her message is still sort of lacking. She's never had one. We've been asking this question for a year.
I've heard her speak at different events, and she has it at events. She's got to apply it.
She doesn't own it. We've always been asking people, what's her message? What's her message? What's her message? And we get it 1 2-minute long answer.
What does she stand for? Why is she running for president? This goes back to that famous Roger Mudd question of Ted Kennedy in 1980. Why do you want to be president?
I've heard her discuss these at fundraisers across over the last 6 weeks, and she's gotten better and better at each one, and there was more clarity.
This is what I don't understand, though, Harold. She's been doing this since 1978. You're telling me now only around a group of millionaires in Manhattan is she finally finding her voice?
Well,
that's a problem.
It wasn't a group of millionaires, but there were groups of people giving money to her, without a doubt. And to your point, I agree with you, Joe, which is why if she doesn't find it sooner rather than later.
But isn't that crazy, though, Harold, that she's been in this business this long and she still hasn't found her voice? I've been giving the same speech with the same jokes for 25 years.
We know.
And you've heard the same jokes.
We know.
But there's a point. You know, people always joked about Ronald Reagan.
Right.
He gave the same speech for 30 years. But it was a good speech. Hillary, what does she stand for? What does she believe? I think Bob Costa has just unlocked.
I think the bigger point is who has it, and does Joe Biden jump in? And I will say,
Bernie Sanders has
a year ago, Bernie Sanders has the crowds that Elizabeth Warren would be getting right now.
Do you know why Bernie has the crowds? Bernie has the crowds because he has the beliefs. It's just like I talked about Great Britain. What happened in Great Britain? This guy looks a lot like Jeremy Corbyn in Great Britain.
But maybe Clinton's
what did
playing
I just say that was funny to you this time, Mika?
No,
What's
I
so
just
funny
was going to finish the thought.
Finish it.
And say that Elizabeth Warren, at this point, a year ago today, people were like, oh, she's too far left, too fringe. You know what? That was conventional thinking. That was the same thinking that people had about Donald Trump. He can't do it for whatever reason. She would be doing really well right now. She would be killing it.
And yet she's not running. So and she decided not to run. I think Mika, I again disagree with you about that. I think a lot of people, or certainly at this table and other places, thought Elizabeth Warren is a Democrat who could catch lightning in a bottle. She's got a lot of enthusiasm in the party. A lot of people thought she might run, but then she decided not to. And so that, you know, begs another question, you know, which is why she decided not to run. I don't have an answer to that question, but I think there were some people who said she was fringe or whatever, but people, if you looked at the Democratic base and you looked at the passion and enthusiasm she inspired, she, you know, would have been a very plausible candidate for president if she had decided to run.
But you got to put some points on the board for Secretary Clinton in this sense. When you listen to every single speech, where is she hammering the most? She's hammering Republicans. She's already really running a general election campaign. She's running on electability, someone who could win a general election, keep the Obama coalition together. It may not be inspiring everyone, but it's a powerful argument, especially against a GOP that's having its own problems.
And the thing Bernie Sanders can credibly say is, I've been talking about these issues my entire life, my entire career, and now the country has come to a place where they see my point of view. Not maybe the entire country, but many Democrats. He's been talking about income inequality, the erosion of the middle class, that the banks are too big. He said, this is who I am, this is what I breathe, and now you're seeing it my way.
Well, and you go and see Bernie Sanders, and there's not a moment. He's cranky and doesn't like the way the press trivializes politics, and he gives the same speech over and over again. But no one has any doubt about who Bernie Sanders is. Right. I know who that guy is. That is who he is.
Look at them.
Warts and all. This guy is who he is. And you watch Joe Biden last week on Colbert. Yeah. People look at that and they say, oh, I know that guy. That's the real deal. And in the same time, you've got stories last week in the paper about how, you know, Hillary Clinton's campaign has decided she now needs to project authenticity. And you see stories about how they learned that by going and talking to focus groups. Those are three very different styles of politics.
And the focus groups that tell her she needs to project authenticity more. There were this weekend, Maggie Haberman had a story about how it was a focus group that they took to her to say, you've got to say you're sorry.
Right.
You know, that's why it was just such a wretched apology where she just sat there and said, I'm sorry. I mean, because everything is focus group driven. Where you look at Bernie Sanders, Bernie believes it. He's always believed it. He's been consistent. Now, while everybody else sees the word socialist as a slur on the Democratic side, Bernie embraces it. You know, Hillary Clinton's going down to Goldman Sachs and telling them they have nothing to apologize. Bernie Sanders has been saying the same thing for 20, 30, 40 years. Look, and I got to say, the same thing on the other side, much differently, Donald Trump. We've said it time and again. Go back and look at his interviews with Jane Pauley in 1987 and 1988. He's saying the same thing now that he was saying.